I'm Derrick Kirkpatrick, and I've been trout fishing for 30 years. In these instructional videos, my friends and I demonstrate the techniques that we deploy to deceive trout. We explore old and new techniques, embracing all styles of fly fishing with no restrictions. I have guided and instructed fly anglers for over 15 years. Our hope and intention is to help you elevate your fly fishing game. This is Trout Tactics 360. Zach and I will often hear, you can't be in control, Euro nymphing, casting 35 feet.
Just like anything, if you're not trying to do it and practice it, you're not going to get good at it. So saying you can't do it from a distance doesn't necessarily mean it can't be done. Farmington River browns are tough. As soon as they know they're playing the game, they get real tough. Keeping a distance, staying far away from them, keeping them comfortable, gets the ease.
Fishing in tight under your rod tip, you have a ton of control. You can really rack up the numbers quickly. But on your medium to large trout streams, it can be difficult to get close to fish. In some of these riffles and runs, you are exposed, and the trout are patterning you. At a high level, Euro nymph anglers are deadly in tight. On pressured streams where the alpha trout have their PhDs, the majority of anglers will spook these large wild browns before having a chance to present their flies. In this video, we will attempt to show you a longline technique that Zach and I use to consistently fool large wild pressured brown trout. Just as it's important to have maximum control of your flies under the rod tip, at a distance, often 3 times the length of your rod, it becomes more physically and mentally demanding to achieve the proper control, tension, and drift. But all is possible. Before we do a deep dive here into longline Euro nymphing, I'd like to take a second just to explain what Trout Tactics 360 is. This first video, Longline Euro, is just one of a few that we've been working on and will release. So for example, micro Euro nymphing styles, jig fishing, dry fly. We've already been working on those, and we do intend to release them. For full quality videos, you can visit our Patreon channel, Trout Tactics 360. And if you join, there's a ton of content. If you're a beginner or you're an advanced angler, just a lot of content. Also, check out our podcast channel, Catching Alphas. You can find that on any of the major podcast platforms. Enjoy. If you make a shit cast, you're going to have a shit drift. So let's go over some long line casting.
We're going to go over the Belgian cast. This is not a beginner cast. If you're already using too much wrist in your cast, you're going to struggle with this, okay? Because we really need to use the graphite and the energy in the rod. Your high middle to high end rent, can handle this cast. Your lower end rods are not going to handle this cast well. I've got an 11-foot 3-weight here. I typically like anything over 10-8 for this technique, okay? I've got our Longline system, which will be covered in this video. And I'm gonna pull off probably about, 45 feet of line or 40 feet of line. Again, this is a long cast, okay? And our positioning is basically almost toes upstream or facing upstream. And the Belgian cast is just really defined by, in my opinion, the stroke. Also be referred to as a oval cast. So on the back cast, we're going to sweep back low, and then we're going to come up and deliver. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep us from tangling our flies, open our loop, and also give us more time to recover on the cast, okay? I'm not trying to do this in one shot. This is not lobbing flies. This is an actual fly cast. You will see a loop go out. It's going to be a really wide loop, but that's what we want, okay? So low, pause, forward. Low, pause, forward. And you can see I'm really giving the flies enough time to get back. If you're coming forward too soon, you're not going to get the power to throw 35 feet in that range. So if you're not doing well with this cast, I suggest tying on a heavier fly, throwing your flies back into your back cast, and waiting to feel the flies get back. This is not a cast with fly line. With fly line, you start your reverse motion when there's still a little line left to uncurl. With this, we're pretty much straightening out, waiting longer, okay? Boom. And then on the final cast, we just stop and we catch. And that's when we go into our strip. And you can see that that sighter is rock solid steady in the air, which is what we want. This allows us to fish further away. There's less chance of us spooking fish that are going to run way up and spook the other fish above. That fish is going to have no clue that we're here. This is a big advantage on pressured water like the Farmington River, where fish see a lot of flies, fish are constantly getting spooked. The big, high quality wild fish pretty much know what's up. So with this technique, we're able to deliver flies and they have no clue that we're there. We'll utilize this cast with French nymphing, which I would designate French nymphing as directly upstream. Short drift, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 out. Right? Long, long cast. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 out. And then also off our rod tip. If we cast off our rod tip, we can drift past our positioning. And by off my rod tip, I mean when the flies get down to me, they're off my rod tip. They're not inside my rod tip. So in other words, this is inside, right? When the flies get down to me, they're right underneath my rod tip. I'm not going to catch a fish there. I've already spooked anything that's there. So it's a little further off, but yet we still have good sighter alignment over our seams. I reach to a line, strip for tension, I'm going to elevate here so I don't hang, and I can go past my position. And this is pretty skinny water here. I wouldn't necessarily do that here. I would more French nymph. But in a deeper run, I could do that technique. So if I reverse this cast and fish on the other side here, I can actually do that. Little slack drift. There you go. Now this cast is obviously harder to do with a backhand, so here I cast it across more. I'm reaching to a line. Boom, right there.
Sighter alignment is crucial when longline Euro nymphing. Here Zach's making a drift, and you can see he's tracking down the stream in the same direction that the bubbles are moving, the same direction the current is moving. This is because he's utilizing drag. He's using the weight of the mono system to keep the flies in check and travel downstream naturally. Where if you don't have good alignment, they're going to drag the flies outside of the line displayed here. It's going to pull them inside towards you. And that's when quality fish will reject your offering. So here, you're going to focus on the highlighted section of the video, and you'll see bubbles. And you need to train your eye when you're out doing this on your own so that you can track and see the bubbles moving downstream and to see how your alignment is and if your sighter is moving in the bubble line. Along with alignment comes line management. As beginners, we're taught to lead the flies through the drift with the rod hand. With longline, you'll see here, my rod hand holds the position that I want the sighter at, and my left hand handles the lead by stripping in the line. Along with alignment, tension, and speed of drift, on a pressured trout stream like the Farmington, for the larger wild fish, I do believe that fly matters. This hookup was a direct result of multiple fly changes in bead colors. The weight of the flies were the same. The routine of drift, the same. The reason I sat here and tried to crack the code was because I felt that there might be a larger wild brown present. Now, on a different system, this might not be my approach. I'd be much more generic. I'd concentrate on drifts and feeding the fish how they want to be fed and not focus so much on being exact. There's no shortcut to mastering the art of fighting trout, more specifically large trout. I can attempt to give you some tips, but you're still going to lose your fair share of battles. And that's okay. You need to develop the skills and mental foresight that are needed to land large, educated trout. After getting a solid hook set into a trout, the goal is to change your rod to an upstream angle. We want the trout to end up upstream of our position so that we can land them. You don't want to land a fish below your position. From this angle, you can get somewhat of an idea of what this trout is doing during the fight and how I am applying certain rod positions. A lower rod angle is an offensive angle. A straight up and down position of the rod is defensive. We tend to lose most fish downstream and across of our position, hence the upstream angle. Here you can see I'm applying low side pressure to get the fish above me, and I turn its head downstream and into the net. Here's another example of Zach at a distance having control, proper tension, good drift. Beginners often struggle with this. Remember, you're stripping to stabilize your sighter. You're not stripping flies in like you normally would. Being smooth, having good tension, and solid stabilization is key for this technique.
Supposed to be.
So this is a cast from Zach's playbook. It's called a coil cast, and you can use it when you don't have any back casting room. Here you can see Zach's kind of pinned up against the bank, and he can't make that typical Belgian cast that we covered. So he's using this coil cast where he coils the line in his fingers, keeps it off the water. Unlike a water load, when you go to shoot your flies, you get too much resistance. But here you'll see the coils just release from his hand and shoot through the guides, giving you maximum distance.
That's a girthy fish. Dude.
Oh.
What is wrong with me? Another super subtle take, man. You see that one? You saw him, right?
I'm playing the sad music right now.
Oh well.
So we've covered the cast, Belgian style casting. We've talked about alignment, talked about tension, a little bit about fighting fish. Now let's put that all together and go through some drifts here. So Belgian style casts out into a strip to tension. Right hand takes over. A little bit of elevation of the rod. Downstream set. Now you'll notice my hook set here is heavy, and that's because I'm using 5X Cortland fluorocarbon. If I was using 6X or 7X, my hook set would be completely different, obviously. So whenever you're changing your tippet sizes, it's important to think about how your hook set is going to change. And that could vary with the rod that you're using. If you're using a 2-weight versus a 3-weight, that needs to change slightly. So we're into another drift here. You'll see I'm sweeping back low and coming through high on the cast. That's that Belgian style cast. And the flies are at a distance, again, stripping to maintain tension and handle the lead. And then when the flies are out in front of me, off my rod tip, all right hand, all rod hand. Again, Belgian, oval cast. Strip for tension. You're going to see that I start to elevate just a little bit and then drop towards the end of the drift. That's just to extend the flies. And my sighter is vertical as I can make it. This is a deep pool. It's a riffle that turns into, just off of where I'm standing, it's chest deep. On this 3-fly rig, the flies are all the same size. However, the weight is different. I think I got a 3.5 mil anchor on with like a 3 and a 2.8. So it's cranking pretty good here. So you'll notice, you know, after I hook up here, I go to an upstream angle at the right time. And I'm trying to get the fish upstream of me. Right where this fish currently is a good place to land a fish with a net. You're seeing, again, I'm barehanding just to ensure the rig doesn't tangle. They're not that big a fish. You'll see I kind of hold the fish sideways there and let gravity take over, and that kind of subdues the fish. It allows me to get the hook out pretty easily. Okay, so let's get into some more drifts here. Now with this drift, in the very beginning, I'm actually out of contact. So I might be targeting more of the deeper water and foregoing the first part of the drift because I've casted through there a bunch of times. But when you're casting in a situation like this, in this water type, where you have really quick water upstream, you're going to notice that my first strip after the cast is made is pretty quick. And it's long. And that's to keep me in contact. So I had a tick or a hang up there early on in that drift, and I was able to see it because I was keeping contact. Now, this isn't like stripping a streamer. These strips are really smooth. And in that brief second that my left hand maxes out on the strip, my right hand takes the drift over until the left hand gets back up and starts the next strip. So watch that here. Strip, right hand takes over, strip, right hand takes over into complete rod hand control. So I get this fish in and he's pretty green. Gets behind me. The important thing to remember is you're on a spindle, right? Don't spread your legs. Feel through the graphite what the fish is doing. Try to have some foresight and stay square to your target. So if the fish zips by you on the inside, you turn on the inside and stay square to the fish. You should always have a game plan for landing large fish. In this scenario, we have a lot of soft water right where we're standing. So it's a really good landing area. One thing worth mentioning is getting into stripping position after the cast is made. I have seen some Euro nymph fishermen fishing in tight where they make their cast and they stay in casting position. So here, at the end of my drift, this is casting position. Line's in my left and right hand, and then I pass to my right hand. Now it's under my right hand and I'm stripping with my left. That's stripping position. If I hook up, I have a lot of control. I can strip in the fish with my left hand. As you'll see right here, I go to strip, strip, okay? Now, if you're in casting position and you hook up, and the line's in your left hand and not under your right, if you're right-handed, you can't strip the fish in, you're stuck. And I'm pretty sure we've all seen it where you see somebody going to bite the line to pass it into stripping position because they've been caught outside of stripping position and getting hooked up with a fish. I've seen it happen in dry fly fishing, you know, where somebody gets hooked up and they're out of position, they're trying to bite the line, get the line into stripping position. It's just sloppy. So getting your pass to your stripping hand is something that needs to happen as a beginner, really. It's foundational. So if you don't have that in your skill set, make it a priority to get that muscle memory down ASAP. So in these next few drifts, you're going to see that I'm doing things with the rod throughout the drift. I may lift the flies. Here I lift, and then I drop. Slowly, I am dropping a little bit of slack, going to a slack drift at the end. Next cast goes out. I gain contact, slowly elevate, and then I lift again. Lift. And I get an eat. So I might be targeting one specific area where I think a fish is, and that's where I might try dropping slack through that zone. I might try lifting the flies. And obviously dead drifting. But I'm not sitting there banging my head against the wall. I know these flies are working. I've been taking fish on them. So let me see if there's a trigger that will trigger them into eating. I caught a couple fish below my position. This might indicate that at the end of my drift, when my flies start to rise and I'm getting eats, fish may be taking emergers. They may be taking bugs that are swimming up through the water column. So instead of setting my target area that I'm fishing either directly across from me or upstream of me, my target area, I now need to position where I think those fish are. That target area I need to put downstream of me where I'm getting that natural lift. Now obviously I can create that lift as well in the earlier parts of the drift. As you can see that I'm mixing that in a little bit here. But again, end of my drift. As the flies start to come up, I'm getting eats. You need to recognize that as positive feedback from the fish. That's them telling you how they want to eat the flies. And you need to make the changes of how you're working the water. Change your target area. Change how you're setting up on the fish, if you can. Here, this is deep water. If I was in skinnier water, I might not have that option to get these eats downstream as the flies are lifting. I might have to fish from below the fish, but I can still control and create that lift. Outside of the physicality and control over drifting our bugs, there's also how we rig them. Are we going to fish a longline leader? Are we going to fish a micro leader? We're going to fish 3 flies. We're going to fish 2 flies. We're going to fish 1 fly. What weight bead are we going to fish? All this has an effect on the drift and what we're doing. There's not really a shortcut to understanding when to use what. There's some general statements that we can make about some of these techniques and what their strong points are. But ultimately, time on the water is going to give you the confidence to know what to do when. And the great thing about this sport is we're always learning. I don't care what level you're at. You're always learning. Zach St. Amand is a relentless savage on the trout stream. He's spent thousands of hours studying pressured wild browns and Farmington River entomology. Zach is a close friend, and he's a grandmaster of this melting pot of longline techniques that we both have been teaching for years. So in this video, we talk about leader construction and so forth, but right now we're going to talk about basically from the sighter down how we would rig with tippet. So generally with longline, we're fishing 5-6X. Now that doesn't mean we won't go outside of that. We'll go in some other rivers or something like 4X or 7X here. But basically we live in that 5 to 6.
5-6 realm, yep.
Yeah, and there's not that much super altering to the rig. Now what I mean by that is, in our micro video, our lengths can be substantially different. But I feel like in our long line, at least to our first fly, because sometimes we'll fish 2, sometimes we'll fish 3. What would you say is the sweet spot? Anywhere from like
4 to 6 feet to
4 to 6
my first
feet, right?
My first
and it's
fly.
usually like 5.5.
Yeah.
That's like, if you wanted a set in stone answer, which that's never a good thing, but
right.
We'll give you 5.5 to the first fly. Now, we tend to fish fluorocarbon, and again, we're trying to catch the large, educated fish. For me, it's just the abrasion resistance. Like, it's just, I don't think that they necessarily like look at your fly and be like, oh, that's nylon, I'm not going to eat it. Like, for me, I just noticed that, if I get them on that 5X Cortland, like, I feel pretty comfy.
Real comfy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk about 2 flies versus 3 flies.
3 flies, it has a lot of benefits. One, if you can cast it properly with a Belgian, aerialized cast, I can reach a lot farther away from me with flies that, without throwing a brick at them. I can space that weight out, and I can fish multiple levels of the water column, multiple stages of, whatever insects could be hatching. I'm a big proponent of having an emerger or just a wet fly to imitate some drowned insects that are in the drift, because I'll see, when I'm sight fishing, a lot of good fish will pause from eating low or mid water column and come up and take a drowned or an emerger right in front of me. So, having the ability to space my splash, the weight out of my splash is going to make, and to then anchor myself a little more at distance with the dispersed, weight, I can stay in more control at a further distance away.
Yeah, your rig above the water, right? Your leader, your visual aspect is certainly more stable than if you fish 2 flies. And if you fish 2 flies to get that distance, oftentimes you're going outside of the realm of profile of the natural. So if you're putting a 4 mil bead on a hendo that's a size 16, 14, maybe even a 12, that's out of proportion. Now, I'm not saying they won't eat that, but I can tell you that the buffer of larger, older wild fish on this pressured system, anything outside of like a 3.2, 3.3, I find lesser results. Now, I've had cases with 3.5, but for the most part, like they want 3 mil.
3 mil. 2.8, 3 mil.
Yep, is perfect.
If it's low water, late in that hatch, a 2.5 will get it done, but usually we don't see those conditions.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we'll fish 3 similar bead sizes, which is kind of maybe slightly out of the ordinary. Maybe some people that are watching this do that, but, you know, instead of having a waste fly, all 3 of our flies are fishing, and we may have one bead color on one of them and another bead color on another to crack the code and see if, hey, that, you know, this bead color is outproducing the other. And then, like Zach said, when fish are feeding up a little higher, well, then we might change the way that we weight distribute the rig. We may have a 3.2, a 3, and a 2.4 or a 2.8 or something like that. And that's going to change how your flies ride throughout the drift. You know, you might, instead of the 3.3s where they're all similar depth, depending on what you're doing with the sighter and tension and stuff like that. But then if you weight them differently and your heaviest is on the bottom, your lightest is on the top, now things, you know, start to tilt up and you're covering different areas of the water column. So you can accomplish a lot just with changing weight, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just, I can't tell you how many times, you know, changing the weight of my middle or upper fly has gotten to eat, where, you know, if I had put a heavier anchor on,
Could have blown the
I
fish
could have
up.
blown the run up.
Yeah.
I could have had 2, you know, another thing that people, you know, when I'm guiding is they never think of, you know, an unnatural descent rate being a tip off to the alphas. Yeah, if they see that plummeting too fast, pardon me.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That'll turn them off from
Yep.
feeding.
And a lot of this stuff that we're
Or if you hang bottom.
right, yeah, definitely.
Start high, go low.
Yes.
Start high and go low.
You know, a lot of the things that we're understanding about these is we've been in opportunities and situations where we can see the fish plain as day. The lighting is good, the bottom is good, but we can't get close enough to fish them. We have to stay away from them.
Yep.
You know, that we sense their agitated body language way further out than, you know, conventional short line kind of comp style distances are going to allow us to get to them.
Much more tolerant.
Yes.
Much more tolerant.
Yep.
For sure. Something else we use when we're rigging, because we're talking about that. So we've said 5.5 feet to our first fly, and then roughly 22 to 24 inches in between.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to go with 2 or 3 flies, just so you know. We're staying with, if we're 5X from the sighter, we stay with that the whole way. Now, if we're fishing for big fish, we'll use tippet rings. 100%. That is your best connection.
Yeah.
You know, there's knots that you can do if you're not that concerned. Obviously, a double surgeons prefer that. I'm looking at a new knot that there's a little more surface area and it's very much like a surgeon's. And maybe we put this in that video, but I'm still test phasing that. But the rate of failure on those types of knots is substantially higher than that of a tippet ring. Just have to make sure you're getting quality tippet rings, because if you have a burr, just as bad. All right, so we're going to go over what kind of rods you would want to use for long line nymphing. We're looking somewhere in a sweet spot of 10.8 to 11.2. And we're looking for certain things to get out of that rod. One is the rod's got to have enough pop to deliver flies 30, 35 feet, but also have good recovery. So some of the rods at these lengths don't have that. most your high-end top of the line rods do, but only a few middle range rods can really do that. So you can't just go out and buy any 10/8 or 11'2" rod and it's going to get the job done. Zach, what are some other things that we look for out of the rod?
Obviously a light enough tip to have sensitivity and to protect lighter tippets. Usually the lowest I'll go is 7, but also having power in the butt section to steer a fish out of structure when I need to. So it's a delicate balance, and like you said, not all rods have that.
And for people that don't know what we mean about recovery, somebody that might be more of a beginner or just doesn't know that much about Euro rods, when we talk about recovery, we're talking about when you make your forward cast and you hit your forward position, the rod stops. It doesn't flail, it's not noodly, it goes down and recovers quickly. And that's partially because we want to stabilize our sighter right away. Now, you'll often hear you can have a lot of control right under your rod tip, and that's true, but you can do it at a distance as well. But you have to, as soon as your flies hit the water, be in control and in position with the sighter how you want it to be. What are your thoughts about just like, once you make that contact, and we talk about contact with longline nymphing, it's a little different than like micro. Like in some of the videos we're going to discuss in our micro videos about how much tension we want and what we want to achieve. But as far as longline, it's a little different, right?
Yeah, it's for me it's about being more next to contact most of the drift. If I say contact and control, it's usually visual for me. Obviously, if I feel anything, I'm going to lift, but I'd say more of my fish come from, a visual strike indication than, that palpable vibrational strike indication that I feel.
Yeah, and that, at a distance, right, because we have near tension, when we have laser tight tension, you get better feel. But light travels faster than sound. So visually, you can see it right away. Now, it depends on the angler. You may just not be laser focused and dialed and don't react that quick, and you have to sharpen those skills. But generally, near contact with that slope that we'll refer to, and if you achieve that, it's quite noticeable. I mean, sometimes the hits are delicate, but we also notice that the fish are a little more apt to hold on to the fly slightly longer. Because when you have laser tight tension, you feel what they feel. When you have near tension, you get the visual indication, but it's also slack. All they have is just the resistance of your leader in the air, that slope. That's just a little bit, and we don't think they feel it quite as much. So there is a little bit of cushion there to be said.
That might not make a huge difference on water that is not as pressured as the Farmington, but we're dealing with highly conditioned, highly pressured fish here. So
right.
a microsecond it might as well be a half an hour on our river. So
yeah, it's all relative. If you're trying to catch a lot of fish, we will fish micro in certain conditions, but overall, this technique, this longline technique, gets us big fish on this river. They don't know we're there, and we're attempting to show you that through video, visually, not just words. But they don't know you're there, and as soon as they know you're there and they're playing the game, they shut right down. And your chances, whatever they were prior, how heavy the fish was feeding, 90, 80%, whatever it is, now substantially decreases to like 10%.
If that. Yeah.
And, that's where patience comes into play. But that's the whole point of this is they don't know you're there, they're comfortable, and you have control. And that's the difference maker. There's a lot of fly fishermen that visit the Farmington, and they'll grit it out and they'll fish that way and they'll catch lots of fish, but they're just not getting the big wilds. And it's not that they don't they're not presenting right, blah blah blah, blah. Like, they're doing the right things, they're catching the fish. It's just they spook the fish before they even get the fly.
It was over before it even started for them.
Yeah.
I watched enough people from bridges and higher banks that they don't know the fish is there, and they grid fish, and before they even get within a presentable distance of their short line techniques, the fish is already spooked out and gone.
Right. So in this scene, Zach is going to attempt to grid out this water and fish it like we would if we were fishing under our rod tip or under 2 lengths of your rod, distance-wise. This is a large rainbow trout. It's been in the river for probably 9 months, and it's feeding pretty confidently, as you'll see here in just a moment. Small bugs, but it's moving quite a ways. So again, Zach can't see where the fish is. He's going to start gridding out, and you'll see that he's fishing basically close to 2 lengths of the rod, right? But even if he threw it in the fish's zone, the fly would pretty much land on the fish's head. It would spook. He just doesn't have enough out of the rod to really hit this fish. Now, he's going to work his way across, and after working his way across, he would then back up on the same path that he came and then move up. But you'll see that he doesn't even get a chance to present to this fish. It spooks. Now, had he been able to get back and move up, now he's going to be probably encroaching on the fish from the side, in which case the fish can see. Now, there are times, obviously, where gridding out the water, making a drift with a certain sighter angle, then changing the angle, then changing the tension, maybe trying a different kind of drift, then moving 8 inches or 12 inches, repeating the same pattern. And fishing mechanical, you're going to catch a lot of fish. In target-rich environments where there's high gradient and moving water, that's going to dampen what they feel through their laterals. 100% you're going to do well. And you'll have a lot of control because it's easier to have control when you're fishing under your rod tip. On pressured wild trout streams, where you don't have that gradient, that high gradient, that fast water all the time, that's where this technique can really shine. And there's other techniques that you can use. Sight nymphing, dry dropper, those are all valid. But in regards to Euro nymphing and not having to abide by comp standards, this is what we do to catch the larger, educated fish. So after Zach spooked this fish, we let it rest for a while, and it moved back out, and we were like, let's see how many drifts we can put on this fish without spooking it. Now, this fish is already on guard, but by presenting at 30, 35 feet, any noise that Zach makes, any vibrations, are pretty much absorbed by the current. And it's not like you can be clumsy and just stumble in there. No, we're being super stealth on approach. And yes, Zach knows where the fish is at this point. We've set up on it. But using this long line technique, you can still grid out the water and move slow. And you're further from the fish, so you're less likely to spook them. So here you'll see, this fish is still going to be feeding, even through, multiple drifts. Throughout this session, Zach gets a few hard looks. This is one right here. nobody home. But the main thing is that, we've put multiple drifts over this fish. Then we rest the fish, right? We change the fly. Then we put a few more over him. But we're reading the language of the fish. Is he still feeding? Is he confident? Another hard look here, but no take. In this next clip, just another example of how aware trout are. Let's see if you can see it. And there's a second drive-by. So we're going to back this up. We're going to go in slow-mo here, and you're going to see in the bottom part of the screen, bird of prey come over, and then you're going to see in the spotlight 3 fish spook. And then the bird of prey coming back over. Drew Haggerty and I were filming this day, just some B-roll stuff. Weren't really prepared to fish, but we ran into one of our Trout Tactics 360 Patreon students, Mike T, and he tipped us off to a really big rainbow trout in an area that we'd often sight him. So we shot over there, found the fish, put up the drone. Here we have a very large rainbow trout. Now, I'll go over exactly what I was using later in the video, but essentially the first fly I threw at it was a squirm with 5X on it, and the fish booted hard to the right. We had to wait for the fish to reset, start feeding again, regain confidence. I dropped down to 8X fluoro Cortland. So fishing to this fish, I'm throwing Paratagones, throwing midges, real small stuff, 22. Then I go to a just a tip, size 18. And I'm throwing a cast, letting the flies hit the water, catch the sighter in the air, not laying down the sighter in front of the fish. When the sighter gets past the fish, I lay it down. And that gives the flies freedom without diagonal drag. So here you're going to see I throw to the right side of the fish, catch the sighter in the air, drop, watch the fish's body language. It's going to turn hard right. Boom. Eat, light set, and I'm hooked up. Now for the fight, we're going to speed this up. But right from hook set, I'm looking for quarter rod engagement. Normally, with 5X, 6X, we're looking for at least half rod engagement during the whole battle. Here, I have quarter engagement. I have the fish on a tight rope, and I'm making sure that the fish does not rub its face in the gravel and me have a bad angle on it, because that's going to damage the line. It's going to break off immediately. So good control in the beginning. Pulled out the net here. That's a joke. I mean, unless the fish came up and downstream, I wanted to have the net in my hand, but I know fully well that this is just getting started. Holding angles. I'm not trying to pin the fish. I only have 8X on, right? We got to wear him out. So here the fish just bolts, does a steelhead style leap. And you can see I'm holding the rod really high, and that's defense. If I start angling the rod slightly, that's more offense. But you'll see when the fish runs, you'll see me kind of reach to the sky, and that's a defensive position. So here the fish is on the bank. I start using side angles, right? I'm bringing him over the middle of the stream, and I'm just very carefully applying angles. Now here you see me reach. This fish goes on another screaming run. And in the very top right corner of the screen, that's where the fish is. So why did I use 8X fluorocarbon? Well, because I didn't have 7X. Nylon is also an option. With nylon, your bugs move a little more freely in the water, but your resistance to the line getting abrasion is substantially worse than fluorocarbon. So there's pros and cons of both. If I had 7X, again, fluoro, Cortland, I would have used it, only had 8. So here I beat the fish up from after a while. Fish is on the surface. I drop the net low in the water, and I just lift up. If you try to stab at a fish of this caliber with the net, you're chancing of breaking it off. But if you get your net down low, much like carp fishing with traditional gear, and just slowly lift up, that is ideal.
Gorgeous.
8X.
Gorgeous.
8X. Sight nymphing.
going to show you our Longline leader. This is used for Longline nymphing 2-3 flies. I also use it when the nymphing is not so hot and I might need to do some dry fly, but I don't want to carry around more than one rod. With this rig, you can cast like 35 feet with a dry fly. Pretty much. You can throw technical casts with it too. So good energy transfer in this. It's also what I use for jigging. Okay. It's preferred for indicator, although we will indicator with micro. So I'm starting out with any high vis line that has low memory. I mean, Amnesia, the 10 pound, we're at a 0.311 or 0.31 millimeter diameter. And then I'm transitioning down to a clear Maxima, or you can use the green Maxima, and that's a 0.25 mm. And then our cider is going to be Cortland tricolor, and that's a 0.23 millimeter, or 8 pound, or 0.009 inches. Millimeter is probably the best unit of measure when you're building out leaders. It's universal. You know, in the US, we do a lot of like 0.009 inches in diameter. That's also fine. But if you were to look at leader systems outside of the US, a lot of times they're going to go by the millimeter. So breaking strength is the worst when describing leaders. Okay. So 0.31, 0.25, and then 0.23. So I got the high vis here, and then that clear piece of Maxima that I have, I'm going to want that to be like 3 feet. So from the center of my chest to my wingspan, I know is roughly what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do a blood knot real quick. Slow tension, release, and then the knot is set. So boom, perfect. Now I'm gonna grab my 8 pound here. I do a 2 color change on this, another blood knot. Boom. And then I showed this knot with the micro system video as well, but normally I'd go to a tippet ring here, about a 2 millimeter tippet ring. The smaller the better. Very convenient. But if you're out on the water and you break off your tippet ring, this is a quick solution. We're going to do a perfection loop. Create the second loop, which you're not going to be able to see that, and then bring the tag in between the 2 loops, pinch, reach through, grab the other loop. I missed it. And as I start to draw, I'm not going to draw all the way. I'm going to use a hook, and I'm going to come in. And just about when I get close to drawing the knot completely up, I'm going to try to pinch it off just to show you, but that's where I'm at with the knot. I'm going to pull on the tag end to shorten the loop. And then I'm going to come in with the fly and pull for tension. Go ahead and clip our tag end. And now I would tie to this just like I would a tippet ring, but there's your little loop that you can tie to. Very light, good energy transfer. I don't have it bust. I mean, listen, this is an 8-pound breaking strength. I'm throwing like 4x max on this in heavy jigging conditions. But most times you just want to make sure that your tippet material is not stronger than the cider. And this is a perfectly fine solution. So that's it. There you have it. That's our long line leader. It's our jigging leader. And also dry fly. Obviously, you're going to cut the tags off. I've seen people leave tags on their system. I do not like that. It's like a wind sail. And we want to cut wind. That's it.
You should see just how much I adore you. Get down on my knees, I do anything for you. I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch my